Good day everyone, Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. Today I'm going to talk about the relationship between a player's current ability rating and attributes in Football Manager. I'm taking a bit of a sidestep from the training analysis series that I've been working on for the past few months. This is because I feel that the relationship between CA and attributes is one of the basic game mechanics in Football Manager that needs to be investigated and studied before I can take further steps in my training analysis series. This video is going to be a funny one because it wouldn't really offer you any practical tips or guides on how to play Football Manager. In fact, if you're just a casual Football Manager player who just wants to enjoy the game without worrying too much about how the game works under the bonnet, then you can skip the video. But if you're a hopeless Football Manager maniac like me, who needs to get to the bottom of the game mechanic, then stick around and I assure you this video will confuse you so much that it's going to turn your brain into scrambled egg by the time it's finished. Trying to establish the exact mathematical relationship between a player's attributes and CA rating has been a holy grail for the Football Manager community for years, if not decades. We all know that a set of high attributes will generally lead to a high CA rating for a player in Football Manager, but no one, to my knowledge, has been able to define the exact formula that can convert a set of attributes into CA rating. I've been racking my brain for the past few days working on this topic, and I'm afraid I don't have the full answer with me today. I haven't been able to come up with a formula that works with 100% accuracy for every single player in the game. Nevertheless, I did come across some interesting findings along the way that I'm happy to share with all of you today. I do want to give special thanks to Craig, who goes by the ID CAE within the Football Manager fan community. He's the guy who's made the post on the FM Scout website regarding the relationship between CA and attributes. I've been communicating with him personally on Discord, and he's provided me with heaps of resources. That's been a big help in making this video. I do encourage all of you to visit the FM Scout website and check out Craig's article on CA on current ability ratings. It provides a solid background information on how CA and attributes work in the game. So my research indicates to me that the attribute CA conversion process in Football Manager can be divided into two separate parts. Let me show you the formulas that are used by the game for those two parts. Okay, here we go. All right, part one. Weighted average attribute, WAA for short, equals the total sum of the centi attributes multiplied by the attribute weighting divided by the total sum of the attribute weighting for that player. All right, stay with me, folks. The explanations are coming, I promise. Okay. Part 2. Recommended CA equals 4 times WAA minus 30 minus 1. Look, now, of course, there's no way for me to verify that these are the correct formulas used by the Football Manager game engine, but I'm pretty confident that these are the correct answers according to the experiments that I've been doing. So let's start talking about part 1 of this attribute CA conversion. So this is when the game calculates a weighted average of a player's attributes. In other words, the game tries to find a flat value that represents an average of the player's attributes, where some attributes are given more consideration than others, depending on the player's playing position. So I'm going to call this value weighted average attribute, or WAA for short. Again, credit must go towards Craig, who came up with the definition of WAA in the articles that he wrote on the FM Scout website. Actually, if you're from an engineering or science background, you'll be familiar with the concept of weighted averages. It's basically finding the average value of a set of samples where not all samples are considered equal. So we're doing the same thing with player attributes in Football Manager. So how do you calculate a player's WAA? You start by adding up the attributes that count towards a player's CA. Not all attributes contribute towards a player's CA rating, such as aggression, eccentricity, determination, and flair, just to name a few. The attributes that do count towards a player's CA are called CA-dependent attributes, CADA for short. There are two sets of CADAs in the game. one set for outfield players and another set for goalkeepers. I'll display the list of CADAs for outfield players and goalkeepers on the screen right now. You can see that out of all these CADAs, I've separated bravery, leadership, and weak foot into separate rows at the bottom. I will explain the reason for this later. And when you add up a player's CADA, it's not just simply adding up all the numbers that you see on the screen. You see, the player attributes in Football Manager, if you look under the bonnet, they're actually on a scale of 1 to 100, not on a scale of 1 to 20. Let's call it centi attributes for now. You know, meter, centimeter, attributes, centi attributes. Get it? When player attributes are displayed in the game, this is what happens. The centi attributes are divided into 5 and are rounded either up or down to the nearest integer before they are displayed in the game, giving you the illusion that player attributes are on a scale of 1 to 20. For example, if a player's passing is shown as in the game as 13 out of 20, it could actually be 12.6 or 12.8. That's rounded up to 13. It could actually be exactly 13.0, or it could be 13.2 or 13.4. That's rounded down to 13. This is why a player in Football Manager can show minor improvements or declines in the game without there being any changes to the attributes. The green or orange arrows that are displayed next to player attributes in the game, they're an indication that either progress or decline has been made by the player as a result of training or match exposure without actually making the attributes tick over to the next integer. So when the game converts player attributes to CA, it's the centi attributes that are added together. Also, not all attributes are considered equal. Different CADAs have different weightings assigned to them depending on the player's playing position. For example, for a striker, attributes such as finishing, acceleration, and agility are given high weightings, whereas for midfielders, passing and decisions are considered important. The list of weightings that are assigned to the different attributes can be found in the pre-game editor. So what you do is you just load up any player in the editor database, and what you have to do is you just go to this all attributes page, and here you'll be able to find all the weightings that are assigned to the different attributes. Anyway, what you have to do is, so you multiply all these centi attributes by their corresponding weightings before you add them up all together. And then you divide that number by the sum of all the weightings for the player's attributes. And the result you get is the weighted average attribute of that player. Now we move on to part 2 of the attribute CA conversion process. Actually, this is the easy part. All you have to do is you take the weighted average attribute of the player that you found in part 1, and you just input that value into the equation that you see on the screen right now. And hey presto, you have the recommended CA rating of the player. Let's take Roberto Firmino as an example. So I've loaded Firmino on the pre-game editor. And if you go to the general page here, you can see that Firmino's recommended CA is 155. And if you go to the all attributes page, you'll be able to see the weightings that are placed on all these attributes, as well as what the game calls controlled attribute 1 to 100. So this is the centi attribute that I was talking about before. For example, Firmino's acceleration is 13 out of 20, which in centi attribute terms is 65 out of 100. Stamina is 16 out of 20, which in centi attribute terms is 80 out of 100. So in order to calculate Firmino's CA rating, the first step is to multiply all these centi attributes by the weightings that correspond to each of these attributes. What I'll do is let me show you this Excel table. So I've created an Excel table that it's basically a copy of the data that you see on this page in the pre-game editor. I've got all the attribute weightings in this column here, all the attributes in this column, and all the centi attributes in this column. So what you have to do is you multiply all the centi attributes by the weighting, and I'll just show you this cell here. Yeah, so you multiply all the centi attributes by the weighting and you add them up all together. Also, what you have to do is to find the total sum of all the weightings of all these CADAs. And then what you have to do is you divide this first number by this second number, and the result that you get is the weighted average attribute for Roberto Firmino. After that, what you have to do is you input this WAA into this formula here, and the result that you get here is Firmino's recommended CA. Now, according to my calculation using this Excel table, Roberto Firmino's recommended CA, rounded to the nearest integer, is 152. But remember, on the editor, it said that Firmino's recommended CA was 155. So there's a discrepancy of 3 CA points. There's a bit of discrepancy between the recommended CA calculated by me and the recommended CA calculated by the game. Obviously, this discrepancy needs an explanation. So let me also define two more terms at this point. A player's recommended CA calculated by the game will be referred to as in-game RCA, and the recommended CA calculated using my formula, using this Excel table, will be referred to as expected RCA. And any discrepancy or gap that occurs between in-game RCA and expected RCA will be referred to as RCA discrepancy or RCA gap. At this point, you might think, Max, if the RCA that you calculate doesn't match up with the RCA calculated by the game, then how can you say that you've got the correct formula? Well, the formulas that I use to convert player attributes to CA work with 100% accuracy for any player who fit the following two criteria. The first criteria is that the number of playing positions that the player can play must be no more than 2. And the second criteria is that the player's CADAs must all be of equal value. Of course, no real player in Football Manager will be able to fit this second criteria, but hear me out for now, yeah? So take a look at this player here. This is an artificial player that I've created using the editor. So this guy plays as a striker, and all of his attributes are 10 out of 20. His in-game RCA is 79, and his expected RCA is 79. It's a match. The RCA gap is 0, meaning that my formula is working. And it's the same when I change the attributes of this player. So have a look at this guy here. So this time all of his attributes are 12, and he can play in 2 playing positions, either as an attacking midfielder or as a central midfielder. His in-game RCA is 119, and his expected RCA is also 119. Again, it's a match. It's Tinder. My formula is Tinder as long as all player attributes are of exactly the same value. But unfortunately, as soon as I start making variations in the player attributes, it's not Tinder anymore. And discrepancies start to appear between in-game RCA and expected RCA. For example, I'll just try changing this guy's attributes. So I'm going to change his acceleration, agility, and balance to 15 out of 20, right? And now you can see that his in-game RCA is 130, but if I enter the same data in the Excel table, so I just change the acceleration, agility, and balance to 15 here, you can see that the expected RCA is 129. So as you can see, a gap starts to appear between in-game RCA and expected RCA. I have 2 possible explanations for this RCA discrepancy. The first is regarding the number of playing positions that a player can play in. Have a look at these tables here, yeah? I've prepared 3 tables here that show you how a player's RCA changes depending on the number of positions that he can play in. The third table here shows you how RCA changes when players can play in 3 different positions. Obviously, there's heaps of combinations possible with 3 positions, so I didn't list every single possible combination that you can have with 3 playing positions. I've just listed here some of the common combinations, like like this one, striker plus left winger plus right winger, or left back plus central defender plus right defender. As you can see, being able to play in two positions on the field do not provide any bonus CA points, but being able to play in three positions on the field will start creating some bonus CA points to players. For example, have a look at this one. So this is a very common combination, yeah? Being able to play as a striker or as a left winger or as a right winger. And this combination will provide 4 bonus CA points to players. So the gap between in-game RCA and expected RCA can be reconciled, at least partially, for players who can play in 3 or more positions on the field. The second explanation for the RCA gap is to do with the weighting that's assigned to player attributes. Remember I told you how player attributes are all assigned different weightings depending on the player's playing position? Now, I have reasons to believe that those weightings are not fixed but variable depending on a few different factors. For example, we have our editor player again, so 10 in all attributes. And if I change his acceleration to 14 out of 20, his in-game RCA is 88, but his expected RCA is 84. So there's a RCA discrepancy of 4 points. And if I change acceleration to 18, now his in-game RCA is 98, but his expected RCA is 92. So now there's the RCA discrepancy is 6 points. Not only is there a discrepancy between in-game RCA and expected RCA, that discrepancy becomes wider and wider as the acceleration attribute moves further away from the rest of the attributes, which suggests to me that the weighting that's assigned to acceleration is not fixed, but it's changing depending on how high or low acceleration is. So how does this attribute weight scaling actually work? Is it on a percentage basis? For example, when acceleration is 14 out of 20, the weighting is multiplied by 1.4, or is it like a flat additional basis? For example, when acceleration is 13, you add 3 to the weighting. So the weighting for the acceleration attribute goes from 10 to 13. I honestly don't know. I've been staring at my Excel table for the past few days, trying out like different mathematical models, but I could not pinpoint the exact formula that governs how weight scaling works. I think at this point it's enough to say that the RCA discrepancy of a player will be relatively small when all his attributes are sort of like all close together, whereas the RCA discrepancy will become wider and wider when there are 1 or 2 attributes that sort of deviate a lot from the rest of the attributes. Now, there's one more interesting fact about CA rating that I wanted to talk about today. When you change a player's attributes or CA rating using the editor, the CADAs of the player will undergo a process of rebalancing. Remember, CADAs they're the attributes that count towards a player's CA rating. Let's have a look at Roberto Firmino again. So Firmino's initial CA rating was 155, and let me just try changing this to 130, okay? And if I go to the all attribute page, you can see that all these Senti attributes undergo a process of rebalancing. So this is the game's way of adjusting all these CADAs in order to match the new CA rating of 130. For example, agility went down from 75 to 68, which on a scale of 1 to 20 is 14. This adjustment / rebalancing process takes place for all CADAs, but there are 3 attributes that do not change, that don't change as much as the rest of the CADAs. They are weak foot, okay, and if I just go down a bit here, and bravery and leadership. Note how most of these CADAs changed by 7 Senti attribute points, but weak foot only changed by one Senti attribute point, while bravery and leadership changed only by 3 Senti attribute points. Bravery, leadership, and weak foot are 3 attributes in the game that do not readjust as much as the other CADAs whenever a player's CA rating changes and the game has to perform a CADA readjustment. I'm not sure why, but this could be because bravery, leadership, and weak foot are 3 attributes in the game that are not affected by training or match exposure. So the developers felt the need to treat them differently from the rest of the CADAs. Who knows? Okay, guys, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. How are we all doing? Are we all still awake? Look, I know all this is very confusing, and that's fine. Like I said at the start, the vast majority of Football Manager players don't need to worry about all this stuff. I don't have conclusive answers on the relationship between a player's CA rating and attributes, but I'm still sharing my findings online in the hope that maybe one day someone watching this video in the future can come up with a bright idea and solve this mystery of CA rating in Football Manager. Guys, the Excel table that I used to calculate the expected RCA of players will be uploaded on my public Dropbox folder, so you guys feel free to play around with it. I've already shown you a few times in this video, but I'll just quickly demonstrate it again. So there are 2 columns here that you need to fill out. This column is for all the attribute weighting, and this column here is the attributes of the player that you're trying to analyze. For example, if you want to calculate the RCA of Roberto Firmino, what you have to do is you open the pregame editor. Obviously, you have to load up Firmino's editor file. And what you do is you have to copy all these attribute weightings into this first column here, right? After that, you have to copy the corresponding attributes into this second column here. You don't have to copy every single attribute that you see on this page. Remember, not all attributes count towards a player's CA. So what you can do is you go back to this page here and you click this bit here, and this column will be it will be sorted in the order of the attribute weightings, and you only have to copy the attributes that have a weighting value assigned to it. All these attributes at the bottom that have a weighting of 0, you don't have to copy them into the Excel table. Anyway, I'll make a summary of everything that I talked about today. So number 1, the attribute to CA conversion process in Football Manager uses the following 2 formulas. I'll display them on the screen right now. Of course, there's no way to know for sure whether these are the right answers, but I'm pretty sure that these are the formulas that are used in the game according to the experiments that I've been doing. Number 2, the player attributes in Football Manager they're really on a scale of 1 to 100. It's just that in the game they are displayed on a scale of 1 to 20. Number 3, the formulas that I used, the ones that I showed you today, they tend to underestimate a player's current ability rating. So there will be some bonus additional CA points if either the player can play in multiple positions on the pitch, or if the player has a few attributes that are markedly higher than his WAA. Number 4, weak foot, bravery, and leadership are 3 attributes in the game that behave a little bit differently from the rest of the attributes whenever there's a change in the player's CA rating in the game. Guys, I know everyone's waiting for a training schedule that you can use in FM23, but there is a lot of basic fundamental groundwork that needs to be covered before I can start constructing my own training schedule. Today's video, for example, provides a lot of insight into how player development works in Football Manager, which will be very useful when I eventually start building my training schedule. So all these videos that I'm doing, they are gradually building towards the end goal of being able to construct the ultimate training schedule for FM23. So do bear with me, and I'll do my best to publish the FM23 training schedule before FM24 comes out at the end of the year. That much I can promise, okay? All right, guys, that's it for today. Any comments or questions, write them down in the comment section below. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.
Doctor, what are you doing?
I'm working on my YouTube video.
You're meant to be working.